The first is House File 5171 with Representative Carroll. As he makes his way to the desk, I'll move House File 5171 be laid over for possible inclusion. And Representative Carroll has an author's amendment, coded the A1. So Representative Carroll moves the A1 to get the bill in the shape he would like. Any discussion to the A1? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. With that, Representative Carroll, can you tell us about House File 5171?
I sure can. Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. Thank you, members. House File 5171, as amended, is a common sense bill to help local permitting authorities, such as cities or counties, implement SolarAPP. It's an automated solar permitting software developed by the National Renewable Energy Lab that enables quicker approval for residential rooftop solar and solar plus storage systems. Currently, solar permitting processes are often inefficient, can increase soft costs by upwards of thousands of dollars for Minnesotans, increase the number of applicants who drop out of solar projects prior to installation, and deter would-be solar users from engaging in a drawn-out process to get a residential solar system. For context, our best-performing cities in Minnesota take, on average, 3 days to issue a building permit. Some jurisdictions take up to 6 weeks. SolarAPP makes much more efficient by allowing an applicant to apply and immediately determine if their proposed system is code compliant. Automated permitting also helps local governments and their staff by easing permitting application volumes, as these systems allow for solar permits to be managed automatically. The goal of the bill is to provide grants ranging from $5,000 to $20,000 to governments. More than anything, HF 5171, there we go, will help build more solar faster, will advance Minnesota's path to 100% carbon-free energy by 2040, a standard we must meet quickly. With that, Madam Chair, I have two testifiers who can speak to the SolarAPP.
Great. Looks like Ben Davis. Please go ahead and introduce yourself for the record and go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Ben Davis. I'm the Chief of Policy for Permit Power. We are a nonprofit whose mission is to automate the permitting for every piece of equipment a home needs to go 100% clean energy. And previously, I was an advisor to the Department of Energy on the development of SolarAPP. This bill is about rapidly increasing the number of homes in Minnesota that have rooftop solar. Today, solar is booming across Europe, and in Germany specifically, 1 in 5 homes have solar, which is much higher than here. And we have similar hardware and labor costs as Germany, and Minnesota has much more sun. But what's different is that Germany, and much of the rest of Europe, has completely cut the red tape. Permitting for residential solar in Germany is completely automated and it's completely standardized. The reason HF 5171 will have an impact is that it incentivizes jurisdictions to automate their residential solar permitting too, by adopting the Federal Department of Energy's SolarAPP. Automated permitting eliminates project delays and significantly reduces project costs because solar installers can take all the staff time previously dedicated to securing permits and devote that to actually installing solar. A highly innovative and effective way to reduce the cost of solar and spur solar growth across Minnesota is to automate residential solar permitting, which would be accomplished by this bill. Thank you so much. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. And we do have one other testifier, Bobby King with Solar United Neighbors. Welcome to committee. Welcome back to committee, Mr. King.
Yeah, thanks for the bill.
Go ahead and state your name for the record and proceed.
Chair Acom and committee, my name is Bobby King. I'm the Minnesota State Director for Solar United Neighbors. We're a national nonprofit that helps people go solar through coordinating a group buy in communities and doing solar education. Around the country, we've helped over 8,000 folks go solar, about 300 here in Minnesota. And in Minnesota, when we do these group buys, we always have a path for low-income homeowners to go solar. And currently, because of the legislature's work last year in increasing the solar rewards funds and dedicating half of that to low-income folks, we hope this year to do as many as we've done in the past 3 years. So currently have 20 low-income folks we're working with to help them take advantage of that program. But at the federal level, you know, we've made a decision that we're going to have some powerful incentives to help folks go solar because we need the renewable energy, and it produces energy savings for folks. So we've got a federal tax incentive of 30%. The USDA has a REAP program that will pay half the cost of solar for farm and rural small businesses. And really the two biggest barriers we see to folks taking advantage of these incentives and keeping this money here in Minnesota or bringing it to Minnesota is interconnection, which I know there's a bill tomorrow you're dealing with, and the upfront costs of doing solar. And SolarAPP is an opportunity for Minnesota to reduce the upfront costs by removing the amount of time installers have to spend on managing paperwork and getting the appropriate permits. And for me, one of the important things about SolarAPP, it's designed to work with local jurisdictions. It doesn't step on or in any way disrespect local control, but it's a way to get things online and to automate a lot of the process. So having Minnesota Commerce have a small grant program to incentivize cities to take a look at this and absorb some of the costs of implementing it, we think it's a smart decision, and thank you for the bill, and we hope to see it pass. And I'm happy to answer any questions, though the details of SolarAPP are better answered by the previous testifier.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else here today that wanted to testify on this bill?
Chair, I just did want to say, actually, permitting and solar apps are not always issues that engage citizenry that much, but we have folks that came just to support the SolarAPP bill here in the audience today. So
That's great.
it's great to see. So thank you.
Thanks for coming, everybody. As I'm looking around, are there any questions from members? Representative Garofalo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I was looking forward to hearing from Ben Davis testifying on this, but apparently it's a different Ben
A
Davis.
different Ben Davis.
Yeah.
We have two Eric Andersons, two Ben Davises. Yeah.
Madam Chair, Representative Carroll, first of all, your underlying bill, I think it's always a good idea to be taking a look at inefficiencies in our system and how we can be delivering things more effectively and prudently. But just as a general policy sense, I am continuing to be bewildered why so many people want to incentivize one of the most expensive forms of renewable energy generation in terms of rooftop solar compared to other forms of renewable. I'm continuing to be challenged to understand why jurisdictions that have gone down this path, specifically Germany and the state of California, have ended up with very bad results, both environmentally and cost-wise. So why is it that we want to aggressively and promote rooftop solar when there are so many other ways to create clean energy that are much more affordable?
Before I pass it over to Representative Carroll or any of his testifiers, I am just going to say, as we are looking to reach our 100% goals, it's going to take all forms of rooftop, distributed, and utility scale solar to reach those goals. And so I certainly appreciate the comments, but I think that we know we need to be moving in all the directions in order to achieve those goals.
Well, Madam Chair, that's my question is, like, why? Why do we, I understand that we have a law that says we got to get to 100%, I get that, but why is it that we have to also pursue within this subset some of the most expensive forms of generation? What justifies this dramatically higher cost structure of putting a separate inverter in every single person's house, of drilling holes in people's roofs, versus if we just had other forms of clean energy that will produce way more energy and are far more cost effective? What is it that says, in your words, that we have to do that we have to put this generation on top of people's houses?
I think what we're doing is providing options and choices. And no one is telling any homeowner or building owner that they need to put this on their roof. But I think having options and choices available is going to help us achieve our goals rather than just putting all of our eggs in one basket. If we are looking at achieving those goals in different ways and giving people the choice to make those right decisions for them, I think that'll help us get us to those goals.
I mean, so that was my question to the author is because, and maybe perhaps you misspoke in your original comments when you said that we have to do this in order to get to 100%. Maybe that was just a verbal semantics, but to the author of the bill, but I continue to be amazed that we are seeing all these efforts at promoting a form of generation that has been disproven in Germany, it's been disproven in California. It's created energy grid nightmares in both those jurisdictions despite huge costs. The amount of energy produced is very low, particularly in a climate like Minnesota where I don't think there's a dispute that the farther you are from the equator, the less potential solar energy there is. And compared to other forms of clean or renewable energy, you can get far more energy at a much lower price. So again, your underlying bill, I have no objections to, but I just continue to be fascinated by people who are promoting this, and I'm trying to find out what public policy benefit we get out of producing really expensive clean energy when we could get much cheaper clean energy.
Well, you've made it.
Representative Carroll.
Thank you, Chair. And Representative Groffler, you've made a conclusion, and it's one I may or may not agree with. I probably don't agree with it. But in terms of the response, the chair addressed your concerns, and I'd see if my testifier has anything else to add to it.
Mr. King, or excuse me, Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Member. I'm not going to, the energy makeup that Minnesota's goals and how to get there, I'm going to leave to people in this room who know more than I do. I can say that in terms of SolarAPP and what this bill would do, for a relatively small investment, there will be a significant impact. We're talking about here, the sizes of the incentives to jurisdictions are between $5,000 and $20,000. And for that, if a jurisdiction automates their solar permitting with SolarAPP, can reduce the cost of solar, the price tag of solar by thousands of dollars. And to me, that just seems like an incredibly good bang for the buck and an investment that the state can make.
Representative Groffalo, did you have any other questions?
I guess I would like someone to answer my question, whether it's the testifier or the two members, that, again, I don't think there's much of a dispute that when you require a separate inverter at every house for this generation, when you're affixing infrastructure to the roof of someone's house, the capacity factors are going to be lower, the costs are going to be higher. And again, Representative Carroll, I have no problem with your underlying bill. I think Mr. Davis's testimony is correct that it will, in fact, make that form of generation less expensive. It's still going to be outrageously expensive when compared to other forms of renewable generation. And I have yet to hear anyone make an articulate case about why we continue to incentivize and encourage that. Again, your underlying bill will make things less expensive. I'm fine with that. But it'd be nice if we could have just someone articulate why we're spending more money when we could spend less.
Well, maybe what I will say in my personal experience having panels on my roof and the cost that it's saving me as a homeowner and the ability to charge my car and store power in the batteries that we have in our home, it gives us huge cost savings that will be recovered for that initial investment in quite short order. So we're not asking the state to put panels on people's roofs. We paid for those panels ourselves. There were incentives, but it's certainly saving my family a significant amount of money every year and will pay for themselves in less than 10 years.
And Madam Chair, I think you highlight a different language we're speaking here. Two different words, cost and price. Those are two entirely different terms. And there is no doubt that the price in your situation that you are paying for energy is saving you a lot of money. There's no doubt about that. In fact, I think a lot of us could be convinced to save money at that perspective. However, the cost is different. that savings that you're experiencing in price, it is incentivized through subsidies at the federal level, at the state level, through solar rewards. And all that money, if that was being put into a more efficient delivery, again, if you just use renewables, you get much more renewable energy at a much lower price. I don't dispute that for you, you would have that. But in that situation, it's important to understand the difference between cost and price. But if what I'm saying is wrong, maybe rooftop solar is cheaper than all these other forms of renewable generation, please, someone make the case to me. Explain to me why California is such a disaster with their rooftop solar. Someone explain to me the feed-in tariff system of Germany and how it's not a disaster and things have been great. Let's have the debate, but I just want to know what the other side of this argument is. Anyone?
I made my argument for myself, Representative Kraft. If you
Yeah,
have any
thank you, Madam Chair. So, Representative Garofalo, I'm not prepared to go into the nitty-gritties of this kind of debate with you, but I will say I don't think it's as clear-cut as you talk about. With utility-scale solar, you have big transmission challenges that we've talked about. There also are, and we're hearing that we have trouble in terms of building out that transmission fast enough. So having more distributed solar in many places has some benefits. The other benefits that it can have is more of a resilient grid, because when you have things distributed in more fashions in more places, that if there's a devastating storm that hits, you have more resiliency built into your grid. So I think there's multiple things here than just a straight, how much does it cost to generate a large amount at array versus a smaller amount, which you're right. At that level, it certainly is more cost effective. But there's many other things in here that I think we would need to consider in a debate like this. And I wasn't ready. I don't think Representative Carroll was ready for this debate now, but I'm happy to have this at a later date.
Any other comments by members or questions? Representative Garofalo, did
Thank
you
you,
have
Madam
any
Chair.
follow-up?
In closing, all I heard Representative Kraft say is I was right. That's all I heard. So
Do we call that selective hearing? Not seeing any other comments or questions from members. Oh, Representative Swazinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it. And just a quick question to the author. Just looking at your bill, RDA funds that you're looking to use, those are developed and curated from ratepayers from Excel territory. Does this program limit access to these funds for cities that are located within Excel Center or Excel distribution?
Madam Chair,
Representative Carroll.
did you say limit to? I believe it does.
It does. Okay. So it looks like he's got a.
Mr. Davis, did you have
Madam Chair, if I
any?
may, I believe beneath that line, there's appropriation language from the general fund, which could be used for outside Excel territory. There's a blank for the dollar figure there, so it's a possibility.
All right, thank you. And then just on a second, do you have an estimate that if you were to deploy this, we were told that it's a very small cost to this program. If we were to deploy this statewide to each municipality, what the total cost would be, or if the state would be on the hook for, if we funded every single city that wanted to put in this SolarAPP, what the potential cost would be to the state or to ratepayers?
Madam Chair,
Representative Carroll.
that figure is being worked on, but I appreciate the question.
Okay, sounds good. And then third, just to Representative Kraft's reply to Representative Garofalo, we look at, one of the arguments against this, or for this, was the idea that distributed generation, and this gets rid of the need to have large transmission lines running across rural Minnesota. That is a real big concern. And I think, one of the issues that we do see, this doesn't work either. You look at the city of Northfield, we had a big bill to move millions of dollars of ratepayer money to beef up the transmission and the area so that folks could still put in rooftop solar on their properties that didn't have room in the line. And so I think it was a tune of like $80,000 or $50,000 per home that was going to be affected. So we're still force feeding this into the system where even on a very distributed system, it doesn't work, and there's no room for it. The state's still coming in with ratepayer money to do it. And I think to Pat's point, he makes a lot of sense that, if your goal is to be carbon free, and you actually believe that this country has limited resources, which it does, And ratepayers have limited resources. You know, if you go to the gas pump, if you go to different bills that people are paying, they have, you know, limited resources. And the idea that you're going to blow money on inefficient renewable resources when you could potentially just focus them on wind, which everyone believes there's a lot of hot air that comes out of this room at times. But, you know, you look at it from a bang for the buck, like there's 0 sense in putting money into solar when it comes to efficiencies, as Pat talked about, the closer you are to the equator. I mean, they're talking in California and Nevada limiting solar installations on desert to protect desert. And we're putting it in the most productive farmland here in Minnesota. Ridiculous. We should be incentivizing building solar on deserts where the land literally is producing zilch to protect the turtle. Come on. Like, I think we can do better than this. I mean, I appreciate the idea. I think it makes some sense that we try to get rid of red tape when it comes to doing anything, preferably mining as well. But, you know, I think that's the point that we're trying to make, is saying, you know, if this is a goal that's legitimate, if you really believe we can get there, you know, this goal is not going to be reached by government subsidies at the federal, state, local, and ratepayer incentives for rooftop solar. If you're going to get someplace close to it, we should do what we do best. We should, in Southwest Minnesota, we do blow wind. And we can do that anywhere across the state. That's the most efficient, cost-effective, least impact on the land, and build it right next to the 494. I think that will solve a lot of the issues that people are dealing with when it comes to transmission lines. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Before I turn it over to Representative Meckland, I just want to maybe comment on a couple of things that Representative Swedzinski said. And when we look at all of the solar that's on prime farmland, it is less than 0.5% of all of it. And so while I understand there are concerns, this is a very small piece of the solar capacity that we have. And as far as Northfield, the capacity constraints come from the colleges gobbling up all of the interconnection issues. And so while there are areas that are congested, I think there's strategies that we can do to alleviate that. And we have an interconnection bill tomorrow that you're going to really enjoy. So, Representative Meckland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question for, I think, probably Mr. Davis. When you go apply for one of these permits now, can you explain to me like who you're applying to and like who's approving it and what the process typically is?
Mr. Davis.
Madam Chair, thank you. Member, are you asking about a permit applied for via SolarAPP or the conventional non-SolarAPP process?
Representative Meckland.
You're talking about some kind of software that would expedite the process of approving a rooftop solar project is what my understanding is thus far. So when you go to a local government, you want to get a permit to put solar on a residential dwelling, what department are you going to?
Mr. Davis.
Madam Chair, member, you are going to the local building department.
So,
Representative Meckland.
thank you, Madam Chair. So are you planning on sending this bill to labor, to where the Department of Labor would weigh in on this as far as, because I would think it would have to be approved. I pull permits all the time. So I would think that it would have to have some input from the Department of Labor as to how they would administer this to the local municipality and how it could all be approved.
Mr. Davis.
Madam Chair, member. So the Department of Labor conducts the inspection for the electrical. Should preface all this with saying, I know many things about SolarAPP. I'm less knowledgeable about the specific permitting processes in Minnesota. We have folks in the room who can speak to that. But my understanding is that the Department of Labor conducts the electrical inspection. So there are 2 jurisdictions in Minnesota that are currently onboarding with SolarAPP, and they're working in partnership with the Department of Labor on how that integration would work.
And I think ultimately this bill is working with local governments and not necessarily labor, but I think given the response.
Madam
Representative Meckland, or Representative Carroll.
Madam Chair, that's correct. So Representative Macklin, it's to the local permitting authority, which is defined in the bill. So it's that, whatever the department is in the local unit of government that deals with permitting.
Representative Macklin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand that, but what the local governing body, with the building official, that's all comes from the Department of Labor, as well as the building inspectors that go out and inspect to make sure the wires were put on right, the mounts were put into the roof system right. All of that is all direction that comes from the Department of Labor. Not to mention, there are also now integrated building materials that produce solar. So it is literally a solar panel that's embedded into a shingle, which requires both, not only a licensed roofer, but also a licensed electrician to be on that particular job site simultaneously. My question to you is this, have you discussed this with the Department of Labor, or do they have any input? Because it's going to have to integrate within that, I would think, within that system, and I'm curious if it's going to be making its way to the Labor Committee.
And I think, good question about going to the Labor Committee, and I will address that in a second. But as far as the permitting, it's just the application to be able to get access, to have the authority to put it on your roof. There will be an inspection that comes through at the end. Representative Meckland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Humbly, I'm going to disagree with you. I go apply for permits all the time. I pull permits all the time. Yes, at the end, I call, I said my job is done, or midway if they want intermittent inspections, and then we close them out. I would personally love to see an app so I didn't have to drive down there for every darn roofing permit and siding permit, to be honest with you. And I would like to see flat fees too, because there's no sense why one city can sell them for a flat fee and others will charge you two grand when it's actually our insurance that are paying all these fees. But my question is simply, I think that I understand where the money's coming from, thus by it would be an energy, it's dealing with solar. However, this does integrate into, and if you recall last year, it was passed that now rooftop solar installers must be licensed by the Department of Labor, so it's even more tied together. But that's all I have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Meckland. Last on the list, we have Representative Igo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just kind of want to follow up. So if this goes into place, are we expecting a demand to increase more for this rooftop solar?
Madam
Representative
Chair,
Carroll.
hopefully.
Representative Igo.
Thank you. So with that demand, one of the concerns I have right away is that we don't necessarily have the supply of solar panels needed to do this, so we're going to increase costs even more unless people are trying to get them. Obviously, right now, we get 96% of our solar panels from overseas, so are you factoring in the carbon cost it's going to take to get those things from overseas because we can't make them here?
Representative Carroll.
I personally am not, but I appreciate your thoughts and your consideration about that, and we'll keep it in mind.
Representative Igo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the reason I bring that up is because the conversation that was had earlier about, we're trying to hit 2040 clean energy goals, zero emissions, we're trying to get there. We need to remember that if we're increasing the demand by legislation like this and getting that supply from somewhere else that doesn't have the same standards as us, it's in itself greenwashing. We're taking the Atticus out and we're sliding it to somewhere else where we're not seeing it. And I think it's really important that when we talk about if we're going to try and get there, we need to do exactly what Representative Garofalo is saying by making sure we're looking at this from a wide lens. I'll make my mining plug like I have many times in this committee. If we want to have solar be really affordable here and for people to have the attainability to be putting it on their houses, that means we need to mine and manufacture it here in Minnesota or somewhere else in this country. We cannot be beholden to the Chinese who have a 96% market share on solar energy. Because otherwise we'll pass legislation like this, it'll increase the demand, which is going to increase the cost, which will increase production in China, which will increase carbon emissions, and we're not actually going to solve the problem that the 2040 bill was trying to solve. These are really important discussions to have, and we can't just blot them out because it's thousands of miles away. So I wanted to make that point today. I see what your bill is trying to accomplish, but for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And I don't want the reaction to be by farming jobs and production outside of the United States. Thank you.
Any closing remarks on the bill, Representative Carroll?
No, I just appreciate your support. Thank you.
Representative Carroll renews his motion that House File 5171 be laid over. The bill is laid over.